This is The Rise Leader, the podcast dedicated to empowering today's leaders to create lasting impact. Each episode delivers insights, strategies, and inspiration from top professionals and visionary thinkers, designed for those leading teams on the front lines and from the executive suite. Discover actionable tools and inspiring stories to elevate your leadership journey. Step up, make a difference, and join the Rise Leader community.
Welcome to the Rise Leader podcast, where we are committing to sharing actionable leadership insights to empower our community to level up their leadership. Today's episode is sponsored by Burgess. Better building starts here, Burgess. Today's episode is entitled The Power of Exposure in Professional Development. Not that kind of exposure. My guest is Kenny DeHill. Kenny is the owner of Charm Restoration, a water, fire, and mold mitigation company that also handles full reconstruction. With over a decade of experience in commercial construction, development, management, and digital marketing, Kenny has built a business focused on delivering top-tier restoration services while prioritizing customer success and employee development. So I want to make sure we unpack that. Kenny, welcome to the Rise Leader podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Kenny, can you start by telling the community a little bit about your career path?
Yeah, so my career path is unique, I would say, and not always by choice. I graduated from U of A in 2008, and perfect time to get into real estate development. Like, you just couldn't have picked a better era than May of 2008. Yeah. And I knew one day I had a goal to be in construction, real estate development. So I ended up just starting from the bottom, working for an electrical contractor, like a very niche data center commissioning type of company. Had zero clue what I was doing. I still feel that way today, but at least I get more reasons why. And then I moved into smaller general contractor, working for a local company, doing mostly tenant improvements. And everything I did was like one more step up. Mm-hmm. And because I didn't have a background in construction and real estate was struggling, you had to do what you had to do
right
in there. And I eventually worked for Ryan Companies, which is one of my proud moments in my career. I set a goal, and I'm very goal oriented about certain things. And the story I like to talk about with Ryan Companies is my goal at the time was I wanted to work for a company that was top 100 nationally ranked on the E&R list. It had to be, I wanted to have a tower crane on my job site. I don't know why, but like I always worked on small sites. So to me, it's like, I still feel like a kid in a sandbox whenever I see construction. So I had to have a tower crane. And then I wanted to do something that would change my skyline. I worked at Marina Heights project, which is a big State Farm job, which is right next to ASU on Tempe Town Lake. At the time, it was the biggest commercial construction project in Arizona history. And it was Ryan Companies was like number 65. So check. There was 6 cranes on that site. So it's like check on that goal.
Right.
And then I remember sitting there one night in my living room and I looked out. I live in Tempe and my project's North Tempe. And I just see a little red dot and it was a State Farm. And I thought like, damn, I literally changed my skyline for my own backyard.
Wow.
And it was a cool reflection to be like, it all came together in there. I left Ryan Companies and I got into commercial real estate development, working on institutional industrial side, different type of world, going from contractors to developers, working with brokers and capital partners. And then this is where like the book doesn't just close, but like the book like hit a hard slam shut. And I went into software development. So I've made a big change in careers. I have some rental properties and I had an idea for a software company. I've always had an entrepreneurial itch. So I made a hard shift into property management software. Did that for a few years, raised a little bit of money. We struggled. Most startups were part of that 95% now. Right. So, but during that time again, I started with no experience in there, going all the way back to my electrical contracting days of you have to figure it out. And I learned product management, digital marketing, customer success, all that component. And when it failed, but I put together a little roadmap of what I want to do. And I wanted to be able to use something from Burbs was the name of the startup, something from Burbs that I could utilize digital marketing or product management in whatever my next company would be.
Yep.
And then the more research I did, I had 3 goals, 3 check marks I was looking for, which was something that was AI proof. I think that's a big difference, which is why I didn't go back into digital marketing.
Right.
I did digital marketing for about 6-9 months at a company because I wanted to learn that skill set. It was 2020, so the world was going crazy. I wanted to learn a skill set that I could apply to my business or companies I work for in the future. I wanted to have an AI-proof company, a recession-proof company, and something I could use a skill set I've already developed. And it came down to home service companies, and restoration kind of made the most sense to me. The more I researched it, the more I liked it. And I'm just, here we are. Now I'm really excited.
Wow, there's so much there, even just in your introduction.
I wouldn't recommend it to people.
It's
not for the faint of heart, my journey.
But I would like to highlight, I mean, this show is about leadership for sure, but we always talk about, well, who you have to lead first is yourself. And I really love that, where like before you went to Ryan, you came up with those 3 criterias, rather objectively. And same thing, building charm, right? You had mentioned being a big goal setter, right? Or of course, goal setting is just one part. I like to call it the goal achievement.
Yeah, that's the easy part.
Is what I'm interested in. Setting is just one little piece of it. But I wanted to highlight those couple of things that you mentioned there, because I think that, and again, I think that's going to really sort of tee up where we go and why I was so sort of in tune with our conversation that we had about these 3 E's that we're going to get into today. But before we go there, I always like to ask each of my guests, what or how has your career path shaped and or life shaped your leadership style?
I like this question. You could hear from my background, like started with small contractors, got to big national ones, worked for different industries as well. And I would say some of the people have told me that my leadership style is more empathetic, of like, I can always adapt to other people. And I think that has to do with also me moving companies in different sizes.
Right.
Because working for a small company is different than working for a big one.
Right.
And working for a construction contractor is different than working for a digital marketing firm. Running your own software company is different than being part of a software company. So I think my leadership style would be more like adapting to where you're at.
Okay.
Whether it's the different people, it's different projects. I'm more of a chameleon.
Okay. All right. Well, let's dive into our actionable tools section. And again, this podcast is really dedicated to equipping, sometimes it's frontline leaders, next level leaders, all the way up to organizational leaders that are a part of the community. But we had that pre-conversation and we talked about this concept that you had of the 3 E's. And I think this was even pretty early in your career development, but I'd love to have you unpack the professional part and tell the community about education, experience, and then exposure. And we're going to go a little bit deeper into exposure.
Sure. So I should say, like, we know each other from Toastmasters, right? And one of the things we talk about are cliches. And I feel like the experience is a big cliche. I've always heard, like, I've been in this industry for 15, 25, 50 years. And if you know Malcolm Gladwell, there's kind of a diminishing returns at some point. It's, I say, like, driving a NASCAR, driving 10,000 hours of a car is different than driving 1,000 hours of 10 different type of cars out there. So the cliche part to me was always like, I've been doing this for 50 years. My next question is always, but how much variety have you seen within that? Now, there's a correlation, if you could say causation, of like, the longer you do something, the more likely you are to see different events that come up. So education is important. People talk about, I've got this training, this is my background degree, and they're, it's a proud accomplishment. And then experience, to me, is what a lot of people hang their hats on. The one thing I always liked is just exposure.
Okay.
And that's where I feel like a lot of people don't talk about. And exposure is, you can be in your 20s. The guy I worked for a digital marketing company, he made like the top, like, Forbes 30 under 30. And the thing about it is, running a company, you're going to get a lot more exposure than, you would being in one specific role, because you're looking over every department. The same thing if I was on a really big job for Marina Heights. I got no exposure because I had to manage 3 jobs or 3 or 4 contracts, trades for a year at a time. Whereas if I was at a smaller job, I would have to manage 20 or 30 different subs. And that's just exposure that I wasn't getting in there. And so to me, the exposure is almost the valuable, like that's the real value of how you learn and grow the most. It can come from just you finding it or you forcefully going after it.
I love that analogy, the one where you were on that really big job, but you had such a narrow niche.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, well, let's go back to education and experience.
Sure.
I think in our original conversation where we sort of teed this up, you're not necessarily downplaying either one of those. They're both
there's value.
critical,
Yeah.
right? Your own education,
Yeah.
whatever that might look like. And obviously there is, as you alluded to, correlation with experience.
Yeah.
It's maybe the breadth of the experience, which is what you're alluding to as
It's
exposure.
It's almost like the Venn diagram, and exposure is that part in the middle. That to me, like, and that's the best value. Like pound for pound, the middle of that Venn diagram is like that's exposure that's going to develop you faster.
Right. So looking back across your career, it would seem then that you is this nurture or nature, right?
Yeah.
Like it would seem that your career trajectory has, whether again, nurture or nature, was this something that just came to you? You think this is your underlying nature, or do you think this is just the way that things have sort of worked out?
I believe in like extreme ownership, not 100%, so I'm not extreme about it, but like I believe in ownership, right? Like
intense ownership.
Yeah, there you go. Like extremely firm ownership in there. So I would say, like looking back on it, I own why I've had to move companies in all these situations. Now the hard shift from construction to software is 100% on me. But starting from small contractors to general contractors to large ones, that was part of what the economy was back in 2008 to 2015. Like there was no construction, so you had to do what you had to do in there. But within each of those departments, each of those phases, I could tell you the exposure elements that I worked on were RBI, small general contractor, in Chandler. I remember after, like at night, I'd always ask the owner, "Hey, do you need help with anything?" He would always say no. Until one night, I was like, "How late are you going to be here till 2 a.m.? Steve, teach me something for 10 minutes that'll save you an hour. I don't care what it is." And he took me up on it. So that was kind of that forced exposure. I forced him to teach me something. I remember like the next week he started handing me 1 or 2 more, and then just became like after a month, everything he would just kind of hand to me. It all started because I forced my exposure on that. Like I didn't know what he was going to give to me. He could have given me like filing papers for all I knew.
Right.
But luckily he gave me estimating in there. So that's like the element where I also talk about the exposure. Like I could have just stayed as a project manager working for this company, but I wanted to get more in there. And actually, like I've always loved entrepreneurship, so I actually wanted him to give me some more business stuff as well in there. And that's why I always wanted to ask him to give me those assignments. So I go back. I think it's always a gray area, nature, nurture in there, but I'm glad I did what I did.
If your experience is the same as mine, but just, I love that story about going to the owner and saying, "Hey, give me something, take it off your plate."
Yeah.
But it seems like, at least what I've found in my life and career, is that sometimes the opportunities that are available or out there, and we just don't ask.
Yeah.
Right. You can either get in your own head or stay in your own lane, or what I've seen a lot in peers across many organizations is that this isn't in my job description sort of mentality, like I don't get paid to do that kind of thing. I'd love to know your point of view, but it has always seemed to me that opportunity is sort of cloaked in sometimes the mundane sometimes the obscure, like you didn't know what you were going to get, right? Fortunately. And that, I think, is my point, is you asked for something and you were given something, and then that part resonated with you. It just happened to be estimating.
Yep.
And not to get all like woo-woo, because that's not who I am anyway, but in life doesn't always work like that.
Buchanan, I totally missed a point right there.
Yeah. Well, let's go back, which seems to me like there is power in the asking.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Because there is, I'll just couch it as opportunity.
Yeah.
That is, latent or dormant. Or
anybody want to learn this skill set? Talk to me. And that's something like I'm going to take deer in the ear with charm.
Right.
Google does this, where Google allows you to have 4 hours a week, 10% of your time, dedicated to whatever project you want, your own project. I mean, it's owned by Google, it's owned by the mothership, but that's where Gmail came from.
Yeah.
So I think that smaller companies feel more tight on resources, and they don't necessarily encourage that in there. So I that's who I am. I'm naturally going to ask for more, try to learn these things, because I'm a curious creature. But if you're not, and your company's not vocal about it or shows some type of hint at it, I understand why most people don't in there. And it takes some vulnerability from both sides to be able to do that.
The asker.
And then like the company should say, anybody want to learn this new skill set?
Right.
I mean, that's something like, as I go into Charm, and we're bringing on team members, if you know anybody, that's like, I love asking non-wrong questions. Are you a better starter or finisher? I'll ask, like, on the side, what do you want to do? If you had to do extra work, would you rather do like bookkeeping, marketing, social media, all these different things? Because if I can find like that 10% that's your side hobby, now I know how to keep you. Now I know how to expose you and grow, because you might be a better marketer than you are a technician or project manager in there.
Right.
So I think like it comes down to the fabric of the company that also should try to embrace that in there. Yeah. Now you got to do your job. You can't sacrifice, like, I'm a project manager, but I really want to do marketing and be terrible at project manager. But if you do a good job, I think a company should be able to recognize that and embrace that for that 10 to 20%, especially for smaller companies. I think it's even more.
I think the other thing to highlight here that I'm picking up from our conversation is, and you've couched this a couple of times as like, I'm wired that way.
Yeah.
Right. And this is sort of a segue to my next question anyway, because we have a lot of frontline leaders out there, mid-level leaders in our community. I think it's important to highlight this, which is, you sort of said it as, most companies should tell you more about what's available, or they should offer cross training and things of that nature. But the key word there was should.
Yeah.
Right. And what I've also seen a lot in my career, or mostly, is most people don't, because, most of them are full-time, like running their position or trying to run a smaller company, like your boss was, the guy working until 2 a.m. Right. So more companies probably should, but in my estimation, the reality is most don't.
Yep.
Right. So that's a great segue to my next question, which is, what should up and coming leaders look for as their career develops to gain more exposure?
So what should leaders get exposed to develop their leadership style more?
Think about our frontline leaders out there that are, maybe they've been out of college for a few years, or they're in the midpoint of their career and they haven't been the type of person that asks. What advice would you give that person on how to broaden their exposure?
I think it comes down to what you want and knowing what you want. I've taken jobs, companies that are like, I know this is a stepping stone. And some companies, like Ryan companies, had enough that I could have had a career up there. Mm-hmm. Smaller companies don't have that in there. So I think understanding right from the get-go, this is my roadmap for myself. And I don't know how many people have a roadmap. And roadmap doesn't have to be like, I have to get here, this is all I want to do, but it's the general direction that you want to go in. For me, I knew if I wanted to have a company one day, I wanted to get exposed to these things. I like to learn about all the puzzle pieces so I can come together and understand, like, how does developers and their facility managers impact Ryan Company's construction. So I think that part really does start with you and knowing where you want to be. If I want to be the best project manager, first principles logic is like, okay, what's everything that goes into for like, what do you need to do to become just a basic best project manager?
Right.
And I think part of that just has to be, you don't know what you don't know yet, but if you know that's what you want to be, you're gonna be open-minded to start thinking like, how do I get there? Is it learning estimating? Is it talking to other people and just having more of a broad mindset and being comfortable to ask these things? And you never know what's gonna happen. I
Sure.
mean, I had Ryan Company's division manager that never gave me anything. Hey, I'm out. See you. Do you need anything? Because again, I go back to like, if I can help 3 levels up, not that like I'm brown nosing, but it's more like if I can get exposure to what they're doing,
Sure.
does that give me a foundation of knowledge that lets me accelerate? Now I understand the big picture, obviously,
Right.
because like the higher up you are, the bigger picture you are in theory.
Yep.
So I think that if I could recap it quickly, would just be knowing where you want to get
Yep.
and being open to try new things to get to there.
Yeah. I love the word that you used earlier in one of your answers was you said, I'm a curious creature.
Yeah.
Right. And so maybe what I would highlight for the community based on what you just said is I believe things like curiosity can be cultivated, right?
Yeah.
I use the analogy of the muscle all the time and building muscle.
Yeah.
I had to build muscle after getting out of home building and becoming an entrepreneur to be a business development person because I had never done that in my career. And I
Yeah.
knew that was going to be, a key part of a successful business. So I had to build my business development muscle, right? And so I would just like to highlight in your answer, first of all, curiosity.
Yeah.
And I mean really curiosity about life. Now we are talking about professional and business right now. So being curious is a good thing.
Yeah. I gotta. Well, so I love just learning about how things work as well. And I'm always curious, like, can I do this myself? I think it's a very natural, like somebody who's in construction is always like, I think I can figure this out.
Okay.
And I was laying in bed one night, getting ready to go to bed, and my now fiance's like, Kenny, can I ask you something? Sure. She goes, I was going through your phone the other day. I was like, oh no. She goes, and I saw like your search history. I was like, oh no. She goes, you are not, and I want to repeat this, you are not going to build our couch. And I was like, oh, because I was like really at buying couches. Like, could I build a couch? I had to explain to her. I was like, look, I was just curious how couches are built. Like now I know I can't build a couch, but like I'm just always curious about learning that stuff. And with YouTube, it was like I could watch a 20-minute video and quickly say. So I thought I was gonna be a lot of trouble, but not couch building.
Communication.
Yeah, seriously.
The other part that I wanted to highlight from the previous answer was also about the knowing where you want to go.
Okay.
Right. And not a podcast topic today on, setting vision for yourself and an organization. We do that in other podcasts and not even specifically on goal setting. But I just want to highlight for the community, here's another leader talking about the power of knowing what you want. And then you use the term, which I think is beautiful, roadmap, right? Which is a plan to get there.
Yeah.
So I think that is a pretty powerful 1-2 punch when you can cultivate your curiosity and you can tag team that up with vision and the roadmap. Very powerful. Well, let's segue to personal development.
Okay.
So I know you've mentioned it earlier in the podcast. That's actually where we met each other, was Dobson Ranch Toastmasters. And so I know, in addition to the mainly professional development that we've talked about thus far on the podcast, obviously personal development is maybe the bedrock to professional development. I think my question was, I've seen you, well, I know that you thrive on personal development in addition to professional. Anything that you'd like to highlight for the community that has been impactful through your life and career?
For my life and my career, Toastmasters is a big thing. And I did it we were just talking before here, I did it for 10 years and then I had my second baby boy in May, so I haven't done it for last year. And you talked about the gym, and we always talk about Toastmasters being a gym. It's funny, like you realize you missed the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get really out of shape, you're like, oh man, now I need the gym. So it goes from like missing to needing this bad.
Right.
And I think the biggest thing about it, I hit a certain level where I kind of stopped caring about my speaking development. But it was the value to me became you're surrounded by other people that are trying to become something bigger and better.
Yes.
And I missed that part. So
Yeah. Well, and I can say similarly that my Toastmasters experience is very impactful. What do they say? Don't, if you're in the room and, you're the smartest person, right? You should probably be looking for a different room. And I went into that Toastmasters experience as a decent speaker. And when I got in that room,
ego check real quick.
it was an ego check immediately.
Yeah.
I've done Toastmasters 2 different times, about 8 years apart. That first round of Toastmasters got me comfortable in front of a group. The second round of Toastmasters got me way out of my comfort zone.
Oh, that's cool.
Because the level of talent at DRTM, Dobson Ranch Toastmasters, is one of the most special things that I've ever seen.
And I feel very fortunate to have found that club. Yeah, and if you could ever find a group like that, I don't care if it's Toastmasters, your gym, your church, whatever it is, it's about the quality of people than it is about, I guess, the quality of the club, because I think that people make those type of things, and it is very fortunate, and it's hard to find. Like, to me, Toastmasters is that club. I don't know if I do another club. I feel spoiled that I don't know. Like, it's the best club I've ever found and been to. And I've been part of organizations that like everyone's aligned for like music. We're like really competitive, but even that kind of like builds like some bad vibes inside of it because it's too competitive. But here, I find a club that like everybody wants everybody to be better.
Right.
And that's why I think I'm not religious at all. But I see the value of church groups like that I'm sure they all genuinely want to help each other. Maybe not help each other, but they want everybody to be better in there. So I can see that in there. CrossFit has that too. Everybody wants you to get in better shape in there. Like, well, Kenny, hold on. Like, let's not kill your back over here, right?
Stop.
We have a PVC pipe in the corner with your name on it. You're good. But I think that is going to increase your odds of success and continuation of personal development. And then once you get into one of those groups, you start to think other things. So Toastmasters, we have fitness groups in there. Like people are hiking, and it kind of makes you think about what other non-personal development, but there's body being health, right? And I think that all that stuff is important. Like if you're religious, you're probably, there's a faith element to you, I'm sure. But then there's probably like the next level is yourself, your family, and it probably makes you want to be better at all of them. And I think that's the key to any type of development group. And I think that's like the hard thing for me is like with one-on-one coaching, sometimes like I resonate as an extrovert having people around there. But coaching is also great because like you also have that accountability in there.
Right.
And a good coach can help you find those groups as well and like nurture you in those groups. I mean, you don't have to teach me fitness, but if you're my coach, you're like, Kenny, go join a CrossFit gym. Right. And even that coaching in there just helps me be like, you're right, I got to be here. Because the more good groups I'm in, it helps with the coaching and it all just continues to add on top of each other for personal development.
I love that. I love the fact that you brought up CrossFit because I've been involved in that also.
I know I'm speaking your love language over here.
Like a decade. And I don't think I equated that until you just said it, but that is the experience that I've had at both CrossFit and Toastmasters, which is there is this element where you're going for your own individual development, but that, even at CrossFit, they call it, a community.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the same thing that I find in Toastmasters is that community that is there, not only for support, but what I tell anybody if I'm trying to talk them into going to Toastmasters for the first time and, to try and put their mind at ease, it is simultaneously one of the most difficult things that I've done for myself, but simultaneously supportive, where
Yeah.
everybody in the room has been on the journey
Yeah.
that you are on, giving your first icebreaker speech or
Mm-hmm.
standing up and forgetting, your own name if
Yeah.
it were table topics. And everybody, can understand that. And that's probably the hardest thing to articulate to somebody that you're trying to talk about Toastmasters, is the value that can be had from that level of
Yeah.
support. So just beautiful.
And kind of a different element of it, but you even talk about AA groups. People have been where you are,
Right,
as a speaker, as a
right.
CrossFit member, as AA. I think that's part of like the quality of groups in there. And you talk about road mapping a little bit. Like, I want to be, we all know him, but like Paul Bernforte, I want to be a Paul Bernforte, Michael
Yes.
Desiderio speaker. I want to be that CrossFit member in there. I mean, any of these personal development groups, because like AA can be personal development.
Yep.
Like them, because like they've recovered and they're living a great life in there.
Right.
The best personal development groups, you probably have the people who've already maxed out, but they're paying it back.
Yes.
And that's probably a quick check of like, is this a good group? Yes or no. That's why you got into coaching too, right? And obviously you're in other groups like that. So you've got that natural want to give back mentality to it.
All right. So who's been the most impactful leader in your life or career?
For business?
Either
or. I was thinking about this. I have a couple different ones.
Sure.
On the business side, I would say 2. Brian Murray's is the CEO of Ryan Companies.
Okay.
But he was the CFO.
Okay.
And I know you've read it, Good to Great. I see your book over there.
Yeah.
He's the only level 5 CEO or like executive I've ever met and worked with.
Okay.
When I first joined them, our 75th year anniversary was in Minnesota. They brought out a couple hundred people. And I remember the first day, Pat Ryan was saying like, hey, take this opportunity to meet people from different departments, above you, below you, whatever it is. Like, just be diverse about who you talk to. In the lunch the first day, I remember Brian Murray, he was pretty new to the company, same with me. And he walked in the cafeteria area and the big wig table was there and they all invited him, saved him a seat. He goes, no, I'm gonna sit over here. I didn't even know who he was, to be honest. And he came down outside my table and we started talking, and he was a new CFO. And to me, that was like, his mission was to learn about the company because he came from healthcare. And that kind of goes back to like, they take time to learn about it. And I appreciated that. And every single time he would come to his quarterly meetings, that he would always give me time, because I always ask questions. He'd always give me like 5 or like 15 minutes the week of after to ask more questions, because he knew it was important to me. And I love that. And it was like, I love business, even at a young age, that he knew that. And we go into deep conversations about it. And I love that. This only level 5 experience. And now he's a CEO after, I think like 7-8 years later, became CEO. And awesome. I loved it. The second one would be professionally was Robbie Rack.
Okay.
Robert Rackison. And he's at C3 Properties. He's the CEO there. Totally different company, totally different vibes in there. He's shown me that like, you have to invest in your people. Like, he just loved his people in there. And his whole thing's like, I'll take care of you so you take care of the client, the contractors, and all of that. And it was genuine. Like, it was super genuine. But he's like, he would talk to everybody in the company. You felt like you can call him for anything, and that he wanted to take an interest in you. And I love that leadership style. And I think Free Properties was one of the best development companies out there for industrial as well. And it has to start with that. Yeah. Like, it's because of what Rack has done and those type of things.
Yes.
And great leadership for businesses. And I want to marry those two in there. And then personally, I don't know, like personally, there's nuggets of different people, but I don't know if there's like one major personal leader that I would look at. I think the classics like your mom. My dad was on the road 275 days a year, so my mom had to keep the house moving. In there. At the same time, my dad,
CEO at home.
yeah. At the same time, like I look at my dad as a leader. So like, I worked for him for a little bit, and seeing that, like I loved watching his leadership style and learning it. And I think we're different leadership styles though. The more older I get, I think the more I realize we're different. So I was late one day to the San Diego office when I worked for him as an intern. And if I didn't make the train, if I didn't pass it by 7:47, I was going to be 2 minutes late. Not a big deal. That day there was a trolley, then a train, then a trolley, then a train. And I was like 8 minutes late. And I walked in and he called the front And he's like, yeah, he's walking in right now. And man, when I got to my office, I got a talking to. Like, never gonna be late, never gonna be pushing that train anymore. But obviously, as his son, I was an 18-year-old. I think he was like, oh, let's send this message out there.
Right.
My dad had a very similar career path as me. Of everyone told me I was like a millennial. You're switching jobs every 2 years. I go, well, that's not because I'm a millennial. My dad was telling me that from like middle school, high school, and that's what he did. He's like, if you want to get ahead in your career faster, give it to yourself.
Yeah.
Don't wait for your company. And he did that until he worked at the final company that he eventually became CEO of. See him as a leader in that aspect for my career development. But personally, I don't know if I've had a bit of rebellion. So there wasn't a lot of band leaders that I got more yelled at.
Right.
So I get the wrong side of leadership, I guess.
Learn lessons a whole bunch of different ways. What is the best actionable leadership lesson that you have learned in either your life or career?
I did music. I'm a music nerd. And I did marching band, and there's something called drum corps. And drum corps would be like the top level. And the group I made was called Santa Clara Vanguard. So that would be like saying you play basketball at Duke. So like in the marching band world, like it's a pretty big deal to be able to say that. And I struggled. I was like the worst of the top in there. So just all summer, I mean, like, I had one person I didn't like. My tech would just literally call me bullshit every day, all day. Like that was his phrase. I mean, just like it beat you down after like 120 days, right?
Right.
And then we got a new person in there for 1 week. It was the first time I think I realized that communication style makes a difference. Because this new guy, his name was Chris Constantine. The way he communicated to me was more like, instead of beating me down, it was more like, hey, I know you can do this. You got this. And the irony is I was the only person that liked him and everybody else hated him. But he just got me. It was 1 week of all summer tour that I had confidence. And I was challenging him on certain things like, hey, watch me do this and find an error. And I messed up. Like he knew that it wasn't me asking for air, but it was like a confidence, like good. So I wouldn't say he was the best leader, but what he taught me was the styles of communication with people are important. I taught high school marching band, and it was a bad year. I went through drum corps season just getting beat up, literally told again I'm bullshit every day for 120 days. Like it was just brutal. So I wasn't happy. And I was beyond at high school kids, and none of the kids liked me. I was like, oh man. I was like, I'm pretty chill vibes usually, but like, I get it. I wouldn't like me either. And I made a decision. I actually switched and I taught the indoor drumline. And I was like, I'm gonna go opposite vibe. Talk to the kids more, understand, like relate to them, motivate them like that. And it worked. And what I learned is like, I think everybody should teach. Kids are all different. I just need to use different words in here. And that taught me like the most about working with people. And I think that's actually where I started like whole chameleon, like, now I know if you're extrovert, introvert, like I can shift. And I feel mature enough that I can shift in those situations. And I think that's like, again, it goes back to that's my leadership style. I would rather adapt to you.
Very adaptive.
Yeah, we had great results. We ended up making 4th place in nationals that year for a new group. Like it was one of my proudest accomplishments. And it also just taught me so much about leadership. Teaching is hard. And like teaching a big group like that, I think is so important. Yeah. Because you really learn more about yourself at that point.
With Rise Leadership, I can also attest that learning to teach something certainly helps deepen your knowledge on the subject. And then to me, that's where, it becomes exponential when you can reduplicate that in others.
Yeah. That's kind of the flywheel effect.
Yeah.
At that point, then it's all of a sudden you've built that trust in the system and your team that they carry it forward, makes you easier. And then the super flywheels when the accountability takes effect. And that going back to Toastmasters, where like if you don't do your job, the whole club tells you about it. Right? You're like, Hugo's over here, like been there, okay.
And they're good at it.
Yeah. Something like getting, shamed at the end of a meeting. Like, why'd you show up late? You didn't do this right. And I love that aspect.
Right. Well, awesome. Kenny, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with our community today on the podcast. I definitely want to mention charmrestoration.com, your website.
Yep.
And ask you if there's anything that we haven't chatted about so far that you wanted to add, or maybe just also if there's any other ways that the community, if they need restoration, can get a hold of you.
We have a future talk.
Okay.
But I just think I'm a big believer in the next generation. I think you always had to buy into the next generation and you have to help shape them. And that's probably why I want to start a company. And like Gen Zers don't scare me. I think it's just understanding who they are. And again, going to where they're at and working with them. And in blue collar, I think that's going to be the future. I think you're seeing some shift in there. And in construction, I don't know how you ever felt, but like, I didn't feel like there's a lot of leadership development in there. A lot of times I would ask for help and they're like, you know, usually the first word start with an F.
Right.
Seriously. So I love what you're trying to do here. And I'm taking value from that because the leadership to me, I think is what will be one of the abilities that we attract talent from and retain talent, right? Two-part system in there. And I think it's just so underrated and unappreciated in this industry.
Right.
Small construction, obviously larger construction, but like I've worked in the larger construction and there's leadership training at the top 2 or 3 levels, but not the bottom 5 levels in there. So I think like kudos to you for doing this. And I love seeing what's coming out here. Charm Restoration, we're in Southeast Valley, Phoenix, Scottsdale, Phoenix, like Chandler, Gilbert area. If you're interested, if you're looking for a career, I mean, we're going to be building a team and hopefully accelerating our growth out there. But we do mold, fire, and water damage, and then reconstruction.
Yep.
That's what I love is the reconstruction part. But really, I think I love just helping people. End of the day, it's problem solving. It's like that's kind of construction, in general. You know. All right, tell me about your puzzle piece before you kick me out of here.
Okay. So I have a image of a puzzle that's all put together, and it's missing one piece. And Kenny asked me about it when we sat down here to chat. And I think it was about, I don't know, this probably goes back to 2012. I created this based on just the analogy of the overall puzzle being, I was VP of operations for a home building company. So it was my duty to create the vision for the organization. So the actual image, that image right there is one of the model homes that was down in Tucson.
Okay.
And I used to tell people those mountains in the back, that's not photoshopped in.
Like, Tucson mountains are beautiful.
That is phenomenal. So it was my job to create the image of the future.
Okay.
And so that's why I chose this beautiful model home as the what I had the puzzle made out of. And I created the image, glued the puzzle to just a little piece of foam core, but I left the one piece out. And then what I would do, I had my entire team, again, probably 2012 or 13, I set my entire team down and I gave each and every one of them a different puzzle piece out of the puzzle. And I would say things like, well, there's only one type of, every puzzle piece in this is different.
Yeah.
And that is a lot like us individually.
Yeah.
Right. But this puzzle can't go together correctly, just like every individual puzzle piece is unique, right? It's got its own little humps and bumps all the way around it.
Yep.
And you have to be able to fit in with the other puzzle pieces around, or you don't get the beautiful image of a model home, or the beautiful image of what this organization will continue to grow and evolve and become.
Yeah.
Right. So it's important to understand that we all are unique and we bring our own gifts and skills, but we have to all work together as a team if we're going to be able to make this beautiful future together. And so I did it with my entire team. And then I did it, every new person that came on, I did it in the onboarding and gave them their own puzzle piece, because again, at the end of the day, it was the contractors doing the work.
Yep.
So that's how the puzzle analogy
I like that
worked out.
What if you made the door the missing piece and be like, you're the key?
I love
that's
that
cool.
idea.
Just, I don't know how many people it clicks with, but when it clicks, it means a lot.
Right.
In there. And so,
well, thanks again, Kenny. Charmrestoration.com. And I want to thank our today's sponsor, which is Burgess. Better building starts here with Burgess. And I want to thank the Rise Leader community. And I wanted to ask you to subscribe to the podcast, like it, share it. And if you would be so willing, leave us a review. And thank you so much.
That's it for this episode of The Rise Leader. Thanks for joining us today. To connect further, visit riseleadershipaz.com, where you can find show notes, resources, and more episodes. You can also find The Rise Leader on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Your feedback helps us reach more leaders and continue to deliver valuable content. Until next time, remember to step up, make a difference, and lead with impact. This is The Rise Leader, signing off.